Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest recording of the Independent Activist podcast with me, Fra Hughes, in Belfast, and Gerard Dinnen, who is the Activist Solidarity Network. So we're going to do a wee podcast here. It's going to take about 30, 35, 40 minutes. There's a lot of things happening in the world. There's a lot of things to talk about. So I'm just going to say, Gerard, nationally and internationally, as an activist, I'm sure you're keeping a very close eye on what's happening geopolitically and what's happening locally. So what would you like to talk about today? What's on the agenda, and what do you find the viewers and the listeners really should be thinking about?
So far, we've sat and we've witnessed the catastrophe going on in Palestine. It's been an ongoing thing for the last 2.5 years, but then you stop and you look, and it's been going on for nearly 7 decades. All these the Palestinian people at this moment in time, they need us. They need people to stand up in the West. They need people to stand up around the world. It's all well and good for protesting, walking down streets and stuff, and it is good seeing people out doing solidarity actions, taking part in protests and whatnot. But the situation's escalated so much now that it's now meaning people need this. People are feeling angry, they're feeling tired, they don't know what to do. Well, there's things you can do, and the people of Ireland are now starting to stand up. There was announcements around the beginning of a campaign of civil disobedience, and that's across the island of Ireland, and that's basically because the urgency around the situation. It's there needs to be a state of urgency, and we're not seeing it from the politicals in power. We're not seeing it from the usual suspects who you'd expect to come out. Even the courts, this is a theatrics, in my opinion. Going through the international courts. You've got the prosecutor, the ICJ, was it, who now wants to keep things secret about the warrants that are going out for Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant and whatever. And then you have the criminalisation of activists. It's basically, they're trying to control the narrative around Palestine. They're trying to continue with it, along with the narrative that Israel's protecting itself, it's defending itself against terrorism, it's fighting an army that wants to destroy them, wipe them off the map. When we look at the actual facts, it's a campaign of erasure. It's a systematic attempt at erasing the Palestinian people and, basically clearing them out of Gaza and the occupied territories. And activists in Ireland now are asking people to stand up. Look at what other people are doing, other groups such as BDS Belfast. Look at what they're doing. Take a bit of inspiration, and stand up and make your voices be heard, because time is running out for the people of Palestine. We're sitting here and we have our first world problems. Don't get me wrong, we do have our own problems, we have our own issues and whatnot, but we are in a comfortable position compared to a lot of people, especially the Palestinian people. And the call for civil disobedience is the right call, because they're not listening. The politicians aren't listening. The news, for example, there on the 22nd of April, there was a day of action held. We held in Belfast. I took part in it. BDS Belfast called for it, and other groups came and took part. So that day of action consisted of occupations of the BBC, Belfast City Hall, Axia, Barclays, and basically that was the day the rally cry went out for people to stand up now and take part in the civil disobedience. Take part, because yes, going out protesting, walking, marching is good, but just look at what the BBC done with the day of action. The direct actions, and this is why things are escalating, because they're not listening. They're not showing what the protests are about or what the people are saying at the protests. Even with direct actions, they're not covering it adequately. So you look at what happened on the 22nd. That day of action happened. The BBC aired footage of the day at 1:00 during the day. They aired the footage of about the action. That night, 6:00, we went and I watched and I looked, and what it was about kneecap, completely plastered, kneecap, anti-Semitic comments made at a festival, and that basically just helps bury the news around the direct actions and people standing up in solidarity with Palestine in Belfast and the wider island. Because it wasn't just in Belfast that this was taking place, this was taking place in Dublin, where activists occupied the RTE studios. And not just in Ireland as well, this is across Europe. So this was it, yeah. We can sit and we can discuss and we can do our bit, but the escalation in protest actions, it's necessary. People don't want to be going out protesting. People don't want to be going out. They want to be living their lives, doing their thing. But when you have a genocide, you know it better than anyone. From you have a genocide of people, and you have people who are struggling. And we look at our own situation and our past history, and we can draw so much similarities between the struggles. You can't help but stand up and act. It's a duty, in my opinion, for people to stand up and act when there's people being slaughtered like that, when there's such injustice happening like that. I'm not here to make I'm not here trying to make political statements I'm just laying out the facts of why I think people need to stand up now. Because yes, we watched the decades of what was happening in Palestine from consecutive Israeli governments' policies, policies of genocide, policies of erasure, of apartheid, have led up to what we now witness today manifest in the physical erasure, proper physical, because it was already physical erasure, but you have now overt physical erasure of a people, and they're not hiding behind any pretense or they're just going at it. Yeah, they'll still throw up the we're defending ourselves against a terrorist organisation or this and that and the other. When we know that no, it's actually people trying to defend themselves from a supremacist government, a supremacist ideology that seeks to erase them, just like the Nazis did with the Jews and the communists, the socialists, the gypsies. It doesn't matter, the gays, whatever, and this is quite similar to it. They're on par with the Nazis. I'm speaking to the choir here when I say that, but yeah, and the reason why protest actions and stuff in Belfast and Ireland are so important, and this is it's pertinent because people will ask you, well, why are you protesting in Ireland? What do you think's going to happen here? What are you going to do to change things here? Well, we need to understand that the politicals in power and the companies that are coming into the island, the multinational corporations, they all connect to this machine that keeps the supremacist entity going. So you've got the weapons manufacturers, you have the funding, you have the politicals providing, they'll give sound bites about we stand with the Palestinians, but in the same light, they'll green light manufacturing, expansion of weapons manufacturers to provide parts for F-35 jets or to provide missiles to go to Ukraine or whatever else, And this ultimately siphons into the imperialist the military industrial complex, and Ireland is being co-opted into that. And I believe, James Connolly did say it. He said if you didn't remove the institutions and you didn't remove, those centres of power from the island, you were going to have a co-opted island. It doesn't matter, if you weren't organising for a socialist republic properly, then you're going to end up with a co-opted institutions, co-opted island by foreign interest. And that's basically where we are today. The politicals in power, they don't listen. They've been criminalising activists. You look at what happened to Mothers Against Genocide. They're outside the Dáil. I'm not too sure it was outside the Dáil. But there was a sit-down protest and the guards were sent in. A big group of them went in, grabbed the activists, and then they subjected the activists to strip searches, cavity searches, complete humiliation, complete humiliation for a sit-down protest. This just shows the type of, the extent to which these people are willing to go, to protect the genocide, to protect the narrative around the Irish politicians and to protect the narrative about up here. It's the same with Sinn Féin. They come out and they give certain bits about how they stand with the Palestinians. They'll go and stand on a protest and they'll say that we stand with the Palestinians. Our struggle's their struggle. But when you look at Conor Murphy, he's not investing in iron or just greenlighting weapons manufacturing plants and whatever else, and it's going out there. And these parts are all dual use. They're going to be used on things that military systems, and the way he distanced himself from it is he says, this is to provide skills to the communities. It's to provide provide rejuvenation to the areas, to help bolster, the community skills and basically make life better for us here. But what does that mean if we're creating systems and parts for weapon systems to then go and kill working class people on other lands? It's convoluted, very convoluted in my mind. And we're not just standing up for Palestine. We have to remember that this is an expanded campaign by the US, the British, the rest of their allies, the Israelis across the region. They're hitting Yemen, the campaign in Yemen. A lot of military analysts, US military analysts, are saying there's under-reporting going on in Yemen about the situation, and that the campaign is far more sustained and far more serious than they're letting on. And it's starting to look like the regions, it's on the precipice. We're still hearing all this, talk about ceasefires, or talk about the nuclear weapons and all this. There's détente between America and Iran. But what's happening in the meantime? The erasure of the Palestinian peoples continue. They're still attacking Lebanon, and they're still hitting Yemen. So I believe as we can only do so much where we are here. We can only do so much to support, because we're not going to free any countries. We can support, we can highlight, we can shout at the top of our lungs that this is happening, and keep it to the fore of people's minds that there are people being slaughtered day and daily. I think last night that child on BBC last night during the report, he was sitting with 17 members of his family, and an Israeli airstrike hit his house. The kid ended up across on another roof, and the body parts of his family were laying around him. And you think you've seen it all. You think you've seen the tip. You think you've seen the brunt of it. But when you see things like that, and it just happens day and day, and it's happening, it just makes you say to yourself, "No, we need to stand up now." It hurts. It hurts not being able to do more or say more or be able to create more change, or to drive a type of change that would be a concrete change or a help for the people of Palestine. Because we are here and there is only so much we can do, but at least we can do it. And that's basically what we need to keep up the direct actions on the stores, the shops. We need to keep the direct actions up on the funders of the genocide, Barclays, home bargains, stock in Israeli products. We need to keep going. We need to keep, because these streams of revenue provide open funds for Israel to continue with their erasure campaign. It allows them to purchase weaponry to kill children day and daily. If you haven't stood up already, keep an eye out. Maybe join your local BDS groups, join local solidarity groups if you can, organise. Because the time's now, if you haven't already, the time's now to stand up. I would just like to show you a wee sticker as well. Keep an eye out for these wee stickers if you can. And you'll be able to join you'll be able to have a look at some of the stuff on BDS, and you'll be able to see their socials and whatnot, and you can join. But just that was basically what I wanted to touch on, just to push forward the urgency around it. There's so many people doing so much good work, so many organisations like yourself in Palestine. It's doing so much amazing work, and it's needed. There's no doubt. That work's needed. All of it's needed. But like you said yourself, it's the situation's fucking so bad now. It's kind of like, yeah. Because I was the same. I'm sitting in, and I was going to protests and stuff, but not taking part in so many direct actions. I felt like my heart it was hurting. It was like fuck, and I think that's how a lot of people feel. They feel like they want to do more and they want to act, and there's so many ways to do that. There's lots of avenues to do that. You don't need to be taking part in direct actions. There's so many different outlets and ways to do it, and just as long as you're able to get up, be part of the movement, and drive towards a better world, not only for the Palestinians but for ourselves. Because when we organise amongst ourselves in the working class, we're able to stand up, unify, and be able to be more resilient in the face of these imperialist machinations, these imperialist ambitions. Because when we stand disunified, we stand fractured, these things are pushed through over the top of us, and it's pushed through without even a recognition of it. I'll go back, just touch on this last point for about Stormont Executive, right? So when you remember the Stormont Executive was collapsed in 2020 to 2024, well, the British government pushed through a procurement policy during that period that basically allowed for the amalgamation of the supply chain here with their supply chain and procurement process. It basically highlighting why it's so important for us to be standing up to the politicians here and speaking out against them, is because these manufacturers and hubs and innovation hubs and whatever, they're all going to be adding to this wider imperialist war machine, and I think it's really important we do stand up and speak out against it, because these weapons will be used against the ordinary working class people across the globe. If it's not Palestine, it'll be somewhere else. With that, we were talking about India, Pakistan the other day. Would you like to touch on it? Because it seems that things are hotting up in the region there. And of course, we had that fatwa come out, and then all of a sudden the situation took place there. Do you want to expand on it?
Yeah, thanks very much. I just want to agree with you, certainly when it comes to BDS Belfast. These are the most active activists that I've seen anywhere. They're out every day taking stuff off the shelves in some of the supermarkets. They're at all the demonstrations. They're doing direct actions. I think that they are a shining example. And I know for a fact that there are other BDS groups in the UK and across Ireland who have taken their inspiration from BDS Belfast. So I want to congratulate them, guys. And I hope maybe to do more with them going forward in the future. Yeah, Pakistan, India, it's the really hot topic at the moment, no pun intended, the Cold War, the hot war. But I want to try and tie a few different things in together, right? Because I do believe that they're like the pebbles along the beach that you can walk past one and not see it, and walk past the second one and not see it. But once you see a line of pebbles, you might kind of think, well, wonder where they're going, and you might start following kind of where they lead. So I'm going to start off with just a chronological thing. I mean, Trump's administration and Putin's administration are in these talks around the proposed ceasefire and end of the war between the breakaway republics, which are now part of the Russian Federation, in Donbass, and what I perceive to be the fascist installed coup from 2014 in Kiev, where you have neo-Nazis and Banderites who murdered something like 18,000 people in those Donbass republics between 2014 and 2022, before the special military operation went in. So you're having these ongoing talks, and then all of a sudden you have a Russian general assassinated in Moscow. I think it was with a car bomb. So you could say, well, that's the Ukrainians just continuing their battle on Russian territory. You could say that's the Ukrainians trying to destabilize this peace process, in inverted commas. So you could see that in isolation. That's part of a war. Maybe these things happen. And then you go on to Pope Francis, very vocal in favor of ending the genocide in Gaza. Apparently, he phoned the Catholic priest in one of the churches in Gaza every night to speak to that Catholic Christian community. So there have always been Christians and Jews and Muslims who lived in peace, side by side, as good neighbours all across the Levant. It's only from the creation of the Zionist fascist state of Israel, and prior to that, the people who wanted to create that Zionist fascist apartheid state, who brought the seeds of discord and violence and death and destruction to the Levant and to the Ummah and to West Asia. So J.D. Vance shakes the hand of the Pope, and the Pope's dead the following day. Now, I'm not making any suggestions that there's any skullduggery going on, but I'm just thinking there's a Russian general assassinated during the talks with America. There's the Pope, who's anti-Zionist, pro-peace. I'll not say he's anti-Zionist. I'll say he's pro-peace. He wanted to bring an end to the death and destruction. He's dead. Then J.D. Vance goes to India. And on the day that he's in India, you have this attack in Kashmir. Now, Kashmir is like Gaza. When the British were forced to leave India, they broke up India into separate component parts in order to continue division within India. So if that had remained an intact country, it would have been a rival to the British Empire, not on the high seas, not militarily, but economically. But what you've had is the separation of India into Pakistan, India. You've also got Bangladesh, you've got Kashmir, you have Sri Lanka and the Tamil Tigers. So you've had that fracture of that Indian, we'll call it the subcontinent, and apparently 50% of the GDP, 50% of the GDP of India and 50% of the GDP of Pakistan is spent in armaments. Now, I don't know what kind of indigenous arms industry they have, but I assume they're importing these weapons from the military industrial complex that you've touched on. So you have this terrorist attack in Kashmir that killed 26 people, including Christians, Muslims, and Hindus, tourists, and I believe some of them may have been on pilgrimage in Kashmir. So you have this terrorist attack in Kashmir, which I'm going to come back to. And then you have the bombing. You have an explosion in the port in Iran. And that's the biggest economic hub for the Iranians for import and export. As soon as I heard there'd been an explosion, I think there's now 46 dead, 1,200 injured, many people seriously injured. So we don't know how high the death toll is going to go. But as soon as I heard that, I thought of the parallels with the explosion in Beirut. Now, I've been to Beirut many times, and I've had people tell me candidly that that was a thermonuclear explosion, and that the French government had people come in and do the forensics in and around what happened, and that they refused to share this information with the Lebanese government. So the French were probably invited in because it had been under the French mandate via the PICO agreement from 1916, 1917. So, I'm bringing that up because Iran's in talks about its nuclear program and the removal of sanctions against Iran with America, and all of a sudden their port goes up. I'm not laughing because of what happened. I'm just laughing when you see all these things like the ducks lining up in a row. Yeah. And then Netanyahu said there'd be no negotiations in Gaza, the negotiations will be carried out under their offensive. So that's not the threat of violence, that is actually violence and use of starvation and subjugation, ethnic cleansing, genocide, in order to subjugate, control, and potentially kind of extradite the people from Gaza. And then you have the bombing in Beirut. Now, you could see that as the Israelis continuing their war against the resistance in Lebanon. But at the same time, the Americans, the French, the EU, and the Israelis are putting constant pressure upon the Lebanese government to kind of divest the resistance from the Lebanese people. I mean, the resistance are the Lebanese people, but they're trying to marginalize them within the parliament. They're trying to put a wedge between the resistance and the Lebanese army. So that bombing on one level is an attack against the resistance, although they're murdering innocent civilians, whole families, anybody anywhere near them. They're dropping these 2,000, 5,000 pound bombs as they're doing in Gaza. So that is a violent message being sent to the Lebanese government, a violent message being sent to the Iranian government, a violent message being sent or being carried out in Kashmir. And the Pope, who was shaking somebody's hand one day and was saying mass, I believe, and going around in his wee mobile. I know he had been unwell for a period of time. Reminds me of Arafat. Yes, Arafat became iller and iller and iller and iller. He was bleeding and they couldn't stop the bleeding. And I thought all along, that's like, he's been poisoned. That was my take all along. And it's years later before they exhumed his body, took it to France, and found out that he had been poisoned with some form of nuclear kind of isotope. So he'd been murdered, quite possibly by the people involved in the Israeli war machine at the time, which I think was Shimon Peres, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So I'm just trying to like draw all those things together, so you can see things in isolation, or you can sit back and go, whoa, 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 whoa. Look at what's happening. Look at what the imperialist states are doing. Look at how they're negotiating through the threat of violence. Now, I'm just going to touch on India and Pakistan, because Modi is the elected leader in India, but he uses Hindu Indian nationalism as his kind of banner to bring together his electoral base. Now, he's a carbon copy of Netanyahu, because you have Israeli supremacist, racist, anti-Islamic sentiment, which he builds upon for his electoral base and as part of his policy of extermination of the Muslim Palestinians and indeed the Christian Palestinians. And you have Modi using exactly the same rhetoric. There have been God knows how many Muslims who have been beaten, raped, murdered in India as he whips up this Hindu supremacist nationalism. So if you look at Israel and you look at India, the one thing they have in common, the leadership, is their disdain and their hate for the people of the Islamic faith. So in many ways, it isn't politics. It's not about politics. Well, it is, because it's all wrapped up in this nationalist supremacist ideology. But they're using the supremacist nationalist ideology in order to cement their place in power. So they create the bogeyman and the enemy are the Muslims, the people of the faith of Islam. So there's no way Pakistan, who India has accused of being involved in this terror attack in Kashmir, were involved in that, because there's nothing. All countries want stability. They don't want the threat of war. 80% of the water that the people of Pakistan require for agriculture and for daily living life comes from a water source, which I assume has been dammed up at some stage in India for like hydroelectric power. I could be wrong. But India has threatened to stop this vital human necessity, which is water, from flowing into Pakistan. They have given the people, the Indian farmers on the border with Pakistan, 4 days to get their crops in. This would imply that the tanks are potentially coming over the border. They want the area cleared for potential invasion. So apparently, like 30 minutes after this attack in Kashmir, the Indian government was saying this was Pakistan. I mean, the reports only filter in through that there's been an attack. No one's claimed responsibility. No one knows who's involved. And I've heard it's a minor group that nobody's ever heard of claim responsibility. It's a classic red flag. And apparently there are reports that the Zionists were already in contact with the Indian government to say, we have your back. So the way I look at this is, you have Modi potentially going for an election. He'd be using this to whip up national hysteria to get himself re-elected. You have the Belt and Road Initiative. So China has a border with India, which is under dispute, and Pakistan. So you've got India, China, Pakistan, all the like parallel borders, all touching each other. And I believe the Belt and Road Initiative was to go through Pakistan, because Pakistan, I believe, also has a connecting border with Iran. So the Belt and Road was going to go from China through Pakistan, through Iran, then possibly on to Russia and then into Western Europe. So the Americans are trying to counteract that with their own Belt and Road Initiative. But whereas the Chinese are putting in money in order to build the infrastructure, the ports, the railways, the terminals, for this free flow of commerce in both directions, from China to Europe, from Europe to China and beyond. The Americans certainly don't want that to happen. I don't believe Pakistan is a threat to Israel, but it's the only Muslim nation in the world that has nuclear weapons, 170 apparently nuclear weapons. So it's in the interests of the Zionists to not necessarily convince Modi, but to say, our common enemy here as the Muslims, we have a problem with Gaza, you have a problem with Kashmir, we have a problem with Iran, you have a problem with Pakistan, we've got your back, let's sell you weapons, let's, get this together. Can you imagine? I mean, Israel couldn't stand alone for more than a week if it didn't have the backing of the world's foremost superpower, right? But can you imagine an Israeli armed to the teeth in West Asia and in India armed to the teeth, and both of them having some type of a military alliance against what I can only describe as the people of Islam? So there's like a pincer movement there. It's like the Israelis want to be the policeman of West Asia, and India and Modi potentially see themselves as the policeman of their region in the Indian subcontinent. So the one thing I don't understand is that the Americans, to my mind, got rid of Imran Khan. Imran Khan had his own independent, separate foreign policy, which is what every independent sovereign nation needs. He refused to go along with American foreign policy when it comes to the region. So there's a political coup. He's in jail. He may never see the light of day. You won't have a political coup in Pakistan without the military backing. So in my mind, the CIA, the American Senate, and others have all come together to push to get rid of Imran Khan, to put in a compliant state oligarchy in Pakistan. So why all of a sudden the Americans, they're not even coming out. I mean, Trump's not out saying, we need to calm this down. We don't need a regional war. They're not, I could be wrong. I haven't heard a dicky bird out of the American administration or the EU or anybody else. So these things don't come out of a vacuum. That terrorist thing was planned. It probably been planned could have been planned 5 years ago, to be put into place whenever they want to literally pull the trigger. Yeah. So you mentioned a fatwa, and I'm glad you did that, buddy, because I'd forgotten about that. But there was a fatwa issued in Pakistan that there's a moral imperative on the people of Pakistan to come to the aid in a humanitarian sense and perhaps a physical sense to stand with the people of Gaza, like the people of Yemen do, and the people of Iran, and previously the people of Syria, to stand against the genocide being waged in Gaza. So you're right, there's another duck to be lined up. As soon as someone says there's a moral imperative to end the genocide in Gaza upon the people of Pakistan, and we've seen some huge rallies in Pakistan as well, calling for an end of the genocide, all of a sudden they want to distract all those people in Pakistan. They don't want anyone going anywhere near the Levant to challenge Israel, and all of a sudden there's potential war between India and Pakistan, and the only winners and the losers will be the people that die, the infrastructure that's destroyed, and the only people who win are the people who want to set the world against the Islamic faith. So just in conclusion, I have come to the conclusion that Zionism wants to create Islam as the holy man, that the people that you want to fear aren't the Zionists. Anti-Semitism needs to be switched round into Islamophobia. And a lot of people on the right in the West and in Europe, to my mind, are funded by Zionist organizations. So there's people leading the right, like, say, Tommy Robinson, people in Ireland, people across Europe. I think they're being financed, whether they know it or not, via the Israeli lobby, via the Israeli government, to say Judaism isn't the problem, Israel isn't the problem, your enemy are these mad takfiri terrorists. And Israel stands in front of the world saying, we are preventing a horde of barbarians from landing on the shores of Europe, and you must support us in order to protect yourself. And it's all projectionism. They are the ones who are barbarous. They are the ones who are genocidal. They are the ones committing war crimes. It's their leaders who should be in The Hague and should be arrested under these warrants. So what I'm just saying to people is, never look at things in isolation. don't be a conspiracy theorist where you're putting things together that don't have any connection. But I personally believe that what I've said there, all those things are connected.
Yeah, I think so. You know, it reminds me when you speak of Pakistan and India, and you speak about the narrative around Islam being the enemy. You know, it kind of reminds me of when communism was the enemy and Russia had to be contained, or the Soviet Union had to be contained. Well, it rings with me that this is kind of like what's happening with Iran now. They're trying to create a containment policy, and that's by destabilizing, especially Pakistan, who have nuclear weapons, the only Islamic country who has it. You know, you can kind of see it's manifesting into that type of dynamic. You know, it already is in that type of dynamic, but it's being pushed now where nation states such as Pakistan are coming into the lane of fire. You know, Pakistan and Iran started to have a bit of a détente there a load of months ago, started talking about cooperation, you know, and then the fatwa comes out, and then all of a sudden you have these, you know, false flag attacks because, as you say, that's what it was, you know, out of the blue, you're having innocent civilians being slaughtered. But to touch on one of your points, Fra, about the nuclear weapons, you see what you said about Israel, you know, Iran without nuclear weapons to the world isn't a danger. And all for all intents and purposes, Iran they aren't a danger. But even if you try and portray them as a danger without nuclear weapons to the world, they aren't. But if Iran is in the process, or if Israel's telling people that Iran's in the process of creating and is near 99% enriched uranium, blah blah blah, then it becomes a problem for the world, and they're able to say, well, look, they are getting nuclear weapons now. This is a world problem. We have to go after Iran. Iran is the issue. Iran. And that's basically what it's seeming like. They're trying to line Iran up here for either complete containment of it or something much wider.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. No, 100%. What they're doing is they're kind of saying, now, Israel has like over 400 undeclared nuclear weapons. Like Pakistan has them, India has them, China has them, North Korea has them, America has them, all of Europe has them. There's a fatwa in Iran that they can't use, that not only will they not produce a nuclear weapon, but they won't use it. It's all about, back to the 1979 revolution, it's all about Iran being an anti-imperialist state. But look, we're going to wrap it up here because we're hitting about 40 minutes. So I just want to say thank you very much. We're going to be doing this again. Next time we'll do the recording via your Activist Solidarity Network site, so people can follow you as the Active Solidarity Network on YouTube and also on Substack, and they can follow me on YouTube and Substack, and also I write for Al Madeen, Fra Hughes, and Jude Collins, and a few other periodicals. So thank you very much, everybody. I'd just like you to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. If you want to follow our work, just follow the two of us on Substack. And maybe next week we'll do a follow-up and what's happening. And sad in one respect, just of what's happening in the world. It's what we're talking about. But, I mean, we'll have to talk about it. Why would we talk about the death and destruction?
Yeah, 100%, Fred. It's sad, but you know, it has to be spoke about. And it's always a pleasure to be sitting speaking to you, practice in education. Anytime I'm speaking with you, always learning something new.
Likewise, buddy. Here, that's how everybody grows politically. That's how everybody grows in their knowledge. You listen to I listen to podcasts and stuff all the time. You listen to somebody else, you hear their views. You may agree with them or not agree with them, but if somebody turns around and says, you know, they've called, you know, for the people of Pakistan to resist the thing in Gaza, and then this kicks off. And how many people know that?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
See you soon.
Thank you, Fred. Bye bye.